Welcome. Welcome to the One Hood Power Hour. We are here tonight. We're super excited to have county council candidates here tonight. My name is Ross Tedder. I have been serving as the civic engagement coordinator here at One Hood since December. Like we said, we're super excited. We have Bethany Hallam here tonight, who is a candidate and a current incumbent for the at-large seat. We have Dennis McDermott, who was a newcomer and who was challenging for the seat in District 11. And later on, we will have current incumbent Mr. Dewitt Walton and also current challenger Carlos Thomas. So that'll be coming up later in the broadcast. Before we continue on, I just want to let you guys know that today is the last day to register to vote. If you have not already done that, do so by 11:59 tonight online. If you are a person who prefers pen and paper, I believe that you can turn it in as long as it's postmarked by today. But get that in as soon as you can. Vote by mail is an option until May 9th. Remember, if you are a resident of Allegheny County, you can go directly down to the county elections office down on Forbes Avenue downtown, adjacent to the city county building. You can do what's called over-the-counter voting. So you apply for a mail ballot, they give you the ballot, you fill it out, you drop it off right then and there. Obviously, like all mail-in ballots won't be counted until the day of, right, the election. But it's a great option if you have plans or if you are a busy person who doesn't necessarily know if they'll be free on a random Tuesday between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. That's for you. That's May 9th. And then, of course, election day itself, right, if you have to wait that long, May 16th. So remember those dates. We said it 100 times. This is a really important year. It's seen as an off year, but no such thing. And not only is this important because of the positions, but this is also laying the groundwork for 2024, which is obviously, goes without saying, is a huge year. So we're super excited tonight. We're ready to get started. County council is a position that is, really, it's one of the most important legislative positions in the county. They hold the county executive accountable. They pass bills, and author bills on their own. They really kind of have a bird's eye view and an ability to address a lot of issues that, it would take 3 or 4 other offices to accomplish otherwise. So we're super excited. We're super excited to talk about the issues that matter today. And we're super glad that we have these folks with us tonight. So without further ado, I will call to the screen Ms. Bethany Hallam and Mr. Dennis McDermott. Thank y'all both for being here tonight. So first things first, before we just get into the purpose of the of the council and the legislative purposes behind this, who are you? What brought you here tonight? Why are you here? Why are people listening to your voice on recording tonight? So we're going to start with Bethany. The way we do this, we do 2-minute allotments for each speaker. To be clear, these folks are not running against one another. Bethany is running for the at-large seat, so she's going to be like one person on council whose vote represents the entirety of the county. Dennis McDermott is with District 10, and I am so embarrassed I don't know the bounds precisely. If you want to jump in.
Yeah, no, District 11 actually. So in District 11 goes from Shadyside, Squirrel Hill, and also goes all the way through Greenfield, Homewood, and through all the way down to Carrick, Southside, and everything like that as well.
Okay, got you. So these folks are running for 2 different positions, but on the same body of legislation. And so they're going to tell us who they are. Starting with Bethany, you have 2 minutes to go.
All right. Thanks so much, Ross. My name is Bethany Hallam. I am the current county council member at large. Again, like Ross said, representing all of Allegheny County, 1.2 million people. I was born and raised in the North Hills. I currently live in the North Side. My full-time job, I'm director of operations at a nonprofit community center and small business incubator located in Wilkinsburg. I'm also go to Duquesne Law School at nighttime. I got involved in politics after I was released from incarceration in 2017. I was just really frustrated with the world. The Donald Trump had just been sworn in as president. I was just coming home with no job and no license, and really had no idea how to live my life, without actively using heroin every day like I was doing for 10 years. And so I wanted to fix my community. And I started working for other candidates. At that time, state rep Sarah Innamorato, then state rep candidate Summer Lee were running for office. And so I got involved on those campaigns. It was the first time I had ever seen people who didn't look like your typical politician running for office. And they inspired me. They made me feel and believe and see that you don't need to have a fancy last name or a bunch of zeros at the end of your balance number on your bank account to get involved and to help your community. And so I got inspired. I was working for different candidates all throughout the county when I realized that no one was ever talking about county government. And the more I started looking into it, I realized that we had this legislative body that represented all 1.2 million people of Allegheny County, and they weren't doing anything. They were spending most of their meetings doing congratulatory proclamations and rubber stamping the county executive's initiatives. And I knew that we deserved more. And I knew that we could have a relevant county council if only we elected the right people who were there, who were willing to stand up for the people at the Allegheny County Jail, fight for accessible and affordable public transportation that you can rely on, make sure that everybody in Allegheny County has the opportunity to thrive. And luckily, we've been able to accomplish a lot of that over these past 4 years. And I really want to take it forward.
Thank you. Dennis, why are you here and why are you running?
First of all, I want to correct myself real quick. I said Homewood earlier. I meant Hazelwood that was in the district as well. My name is Dennis McDermott. I am a climate organizer here in Pittsburgh. I live right over in Shadyside. Part of the reason I'm running is because of the climate and how much the county council especially, but the county government could do to improve the climate outcomes for some of the most vulnerable populations that we have here in Allegheny County. One statistic that stuck out to me, and I've been repeating this the entire time I've been running, and I think a lot of politicians should be repeating it. We've been electing Democrats from 20 years on this county council and for the county executive for the most part. And this has not been mentioned, the fact that if you live in the southern portion of just my district in Mount Oliver, you can expect to have a life expectancy of 65 years old. And if you live in the northern part of my district in Point Breeze, you can expect to have a life expectancy of 85 years old. This discrepancy is due to a lot of different factors, but the climate is definitely, air quality is definitely one of the more prevalent factors among this. And we've been electing Democrats, and this has not been addressed by those Democrats we've been electing. And I think that is just a travesty, and it needs to be corrected as soon as possible. I think I'm also running, another big reason I'm running is I believe I live in the most progressive district in all of Allegheny County when it comes to the county council. And I don't believe that we've had representation from the most progressive members on the Allegheny County Council. We've had this county council in place for a while now, and like Bethany mentioned, much of the votes have not been controversial at all. It has just been basically approving whatever the county executive puts forth. And it wasn't until a few years ago that we started seeing some contested votes, some more progress being made, and that coincided with previous elections and such. And I think it's time that we continue building a coalition. And I think the person who is in my seat should be at the front, leading that coalition, should be leading when it comes to a lot of these issues because they represent such a progressive district. And I don't think we've seen that in the past 8 years that Paul's held the seat. And I'd like to be that going forward.
Thank you both. So we're going to go in reverse order now. Dennis first, then Bethany. This is our first official question. What do you view fundamentally, right, as the purpose of the county council? Starting with Dennis.
See, for me, the primary purpose, in my eyes, of the county council is to do what has been done very effectively in the past 3 to 4 years on the county council, which is to hold the county executive accountable and make sure that they're listening to the constituents' concerns. We saw recently with the ban on fracking in the county parks, Rich Fitzgerald has been putting a lot of policies in place that are what I like to call, when I'm being nice at the doors, when I'm knocking doors, business-friendly policies, which are friendly to big businesses and friendly to a lot of larger corporations that like to donate in these elections, but aren't necessarily friendly to the lungs of our children with disproportionate asthma rates here in Allegheny County, and not necessarily friendly to the minority communities, poor communities in our county as well. So I think it's important that we do that work to hold the county executive possible. And I think that's one of the main priorities I would want to make sure. Whoever our new county exec is, we got to make sure that all these promises that they're making during these debates, and they're making some pretty big promises, that they're actually going to follow through with them, because there's been some really good statements made. There's been really good debates saying things that we want to actually do that are, I think, really progressive pieces of legislation, things that they want to put forth. And I want to make sure that happens when they actually get into the county council. And then I think another way that a purpose of the county council is kind of to engage with the community constituents in a way that the county executive and other larger elected offices can't. I represent a lot less people, well, still a lot of people, a lot less people than the county exec does. And I think I'd have to, get out there with the community members and actually talk to them and see the policies they want to see the things that are actually affecting them in everyday lives. And it overwhelmingly is things like air quality. We're seeing with these people that are their main concerns. We should not be putting in any policies that contradict the priorities of improving our air quality here in Pittsburgh.
Thank you. Bethany?
Sure. I mean, the number one purpose of county council is to make laws, and hopefully laws that help the residents of Allegheny County. Our job is, again, to be the checks and balances on the county executive, but also to be a voice of the community. As Dennis mentioned, there are a lot of people from vastly different areas of this county who get left out of the conversation over and over again. And it's because we keep electing the same people who keep ignoring those communities. And so our job is to stand up for what's right. Our job is to use our platforms to advocate for the residents of Allegheny County. Our job is to take the ideas of the residents of Allegheny County, bring them to the legislating table, a co-governing process where we make sure that we are passing legislation that benefits the most residents of Allegheny County possible. Our job is to make sure that everybody in Allegheny County has access to clean air and clean water. Our job is to make sure that people stop dying in the Allegheny County jail. Our job is to make sure that workers have good jobs, union jobs with good paying wages. Our job is to be oversight of the over 100 different police forces in Allegheny County, like we did with our Civilian Police Review Board. Our job is to make sure that we're using the $3 billion county budget every year in ways that most benefits the residents of Allegheny County who need it most. Whether that's providing housing for people who don't have housing, whether that's helping keep people in their homes who have homes, whether that's using our Department of Human Services budget to really just make sure that everyone is taken care of, that people are met where they're at, that their needs are being fulfilled, and that they truly feel like Allegheny County is a place where they can thrive. And right now, for so many of our residents, they're really not feeling that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So you'll both kind of address this, in your answers with the purpose of the position, and both of you kind of had some variation of like community outreach as being kind of a part of that. How specifically can you use this post to connect with the community, right? And why is community building power building? Why is that so important for this political moment that we're in here in Allegheny County? Going with Bethany first.
Sure. I mean, it's the most important part of the job. Our job is to show up everywhere all the time. Unlike other elected offices, we don't have a real full, robust staff. All 15 members of county council are supported by just 4 staff members for all 15 of us. So it's important that we, as the elected officials, love our community, know the community that we are elected to represent, and most importantly, show up. I don't see either of our opponents here today, and that's disappointing, because the only way that you can truly represent a community, the only way that you can be a voice of that community, is to be actively going out and talking to them and listening to them, most importantly. I'm not ashamed to say that the majority of the legislation that I've authored, that I've introduced, and that we've passed has not been my idea, but instead has been ideas that have come out of conversations with communities, showing up in places, particularly those places that you don't usually see elected officials showing up in, that maybe the folks from Harrisburg or Washington, D.C. aren't making a priority when it comes to them representing them on the state and federal level. So we have a county government that has a lot of resources to be able to help folks, but the only way that we can provide that help effectively is if we're there where they need us, if we answer that call, if we're always showing up, if we're doing our job, both in the council meetings, fighting for what's right, voting for what's right, and also out in the community, listening to people's concerns, bringing those concerns to the table, and also making sure that our county government looks like the districts that we represent. In my case, all of Allegheny County. We need to have employees for the county government, coalitions through the county government, people on the different boards and authorities throughout Allegheny County who look like the rest of Allegheny County, who represent all of Allegheny County, a diverse subsection of people who want to serve. And yet for so long, these opportunities for employment and board and authority positions at the county level have been given as political favors instead of those who have been most impacted by the hardships of living in Allegheny County.
No, thank you for that very thoughtful answer. Dennis?
So I've talked to people every day. Part of my job, I was the canvas director from Food and Water Action, like I mentioned, and we knocked thousands and thousands and thousands of doors just talking to people. And I knocked a large portion of those myself. And I talk to people every day, whether it's young people, whether it's older people, people from all different types of communities in the suburbs and the city and everywhere, who've just lost faith in the electoral system. They do not trust it to actually enact the change they want to see, or they've been fighting for years for the same thing to be put in place with overwhelming support from their friends, neighbors, and their communities for these things to be put in place, and they just don't see it happen. I think it's important now more than ever to connect with the community and actually show them that we can actually accomplish the things they want to see accomplished. And I think to do that, we have to meet the voters where they are. And I think one of the best ways to do that, in my opinion, I'm a little biased, is to literally go to the doors of the people and knock on their doors and ask them what they want, ask them the things they want to see. You're going to get a lot of people who are asking me as a county council person to personally fix the potholes on the road, but that leads to larger questions about how we fund these things. And are the things that being adequately funded to fix the problems that may seem minuscule, may seem very hyper local, but the conversation isn't there if you never knock on their door. I think it's also important to, in this moment, to build coalitions, build experiences with your community members and other people who are interested in actually seeing change. If I win, if I lose, it's not going to make much of an effect of my trajectory going forward. I'm still going to continue working to improve our political community here in Allegheny County. I'm going to still continue working with people across organizations to kind of build their experience and make sure they have the experience that they need if they want to run for office, help someone run for office, or bring more awareness to different groups of people throughout the Allegheny County. I think we have to do the educational work. I think we have to do the raising awareness work, and you can't do that unless you meet people.
100%. So one of the key functions of county council is sort of in tandem with the county executive overseeing the financial health of the county or the financial direction of the county longer term, right? We're a big county. We have like 120 some municipalities. It takes a lot of communication and a lot of work to kind of make things happen. How do you guys think the county should work alongside both the city of Pittsburgh and also other smaller independent municipalities, right, to increase funding for a whole host of things, right, for education, for healthcare, for what have you, right? How do we work with them in increasing funding and ensuring that funds are sort of used to increase equity in that jurisdiction? Going to start with Dennis.
Yeah, and I think I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. And I think funding currently is not, if funding was being adequately appropriated to different communities in a way that made sense in terms of equity and in terms of actually addressing the needs of marginalized communities and poorer communities throughout Allegheny County, I think we wouldn't see a 20-year life expectancy difference between our richest and poorest districts here in my district and just throughout the county in general. And I think we wouldn't see a lot of issues when it comes to transit equity, access to transit, and where we end up putting our biggest polluting industries and stuff like that. I don't think that would be an issue. It's simply just not happening right now. So I think when we do things going forward, when we try and bring in more funds for the county, whether it's through property reassessment or making sure nonprofits pay their fair share, or whether it's fining a lot of the biggest polluters here in the county to make sure that they don't pollute as much. Where are those funds going? Where are we bringing these funds in, and where are they going back to? Because I think, in my opinion, the people when we fine a lot of the biggest polluters in the county. The funding should be going back to the people who see the worst effects of air pollution and the worst effects of environmental injustice and climate change in our communities. And I think when it comes to those things, that's just not happening right now. So that's one of my main focuses when it comes to working with these communities. So I think it's listening to these municipalities. I think it's listening to these neighborhoods that have been getting the short end of the stick when it comes to funding and making sure that we address these huge disparities that exist across these communities.
Yeah. Bethany?
130 municipalities in Allegheny County, 130 municipalities who could use support, assistance, hand-holding from the county, who has such a larger budget. And so what we're seeing now is, because of the, backdoor secrecy that is the current county administration, there hasn't been much collaboration amongst the municipalities. Over and over again, when I go to borough council meetings and go and listen to the boards of commissioners, that's what they're asking for, is help. And they're not getting it. And so I think a lot of it has to do with, we are finally, after 11 long, dreadful years, getting a new county executive. I'm really excited about that, because I think that what we've been building on county council is really complemented by a county executive who is more of a partner than a barrier, than an obstacle to getting stuff done. And so I do believe that come January, we will see a much brighter Allegheny County that works better with the various municipalities. And also, a lot of it has to come down to people running for these various offices, and if you are sitting at home and you're watching this right now and you are involved enough and you care enough about your community to sit and watch us talk about our plans for the community, please run for office. It is not too late to run a write-in campaign. In so many of these municipalities across Allegheny County, there aren't even enough candidates running for the various offices that are up. And so I've worked a lot over the past few years helping people run for office themselves, developing a toolkit for local candidates who want to run for office, step by step, of all the different administrative hurdles and all the different things you need to do in order to get on the ballot and to get your name and your ideas out there. We need to have something like that at a county-wide level, where our government is supporting people who want to get involved, whether it's teaching them, nonpartisan, of course, how to run for office, whether it's helping them get involved with the various boards and authorities that we have throughout the county. And at the end of the day, just being a resource, have an office that the municipalities can call and say, we need help. We do not have the money or the support staff that you have at the county. Please help us. This is what we're trying to do. And have folks at the county level in that department who are going to help make that a reality. You're muted, Ross.
That's hilarious. Man, technology, right? So for our next question, and both of you again, I feel like hopefully I'm not asking redundant questions, like you all kind of touched on this in your previous answers, specifically when it comes to health, right? We have everything going on from the fentanyl crisis, right, which is, on an uptick, to infant mortality, right? There's a lot of health concerns, that people have to worry about. How can the county improve that, for people? And starting with Bethany.
Yeah, so there are a bunch of different ways. I mean, first of all, the lack of healthcare at the Allegheny County Jail is atrocious. There's little to no access to healthcare or mental health care. I believe that is one of the reasons why we have one of the highest per capita death rates of any county jail at the nation. So I think we would need to address the healthcare first that we are constitutionally obligated to provide to incarcerated individuals. Additionally, when it comes to the overdose epidemic, when it comes to high rates of infant mortality and maternal mortality, we have a Department of Human Services, again, that has about $1 billion every year towards addressing services for people. So people always think about health and they think about health department, but a lot of the times what we're seeing is it's all these societal factors that are contributing to people having lower life expectancy rates, like Dennis talked about, so making sure that we're using DHS and their $1 billion to provide housing for people who don't have it, to connect people with social services, how to get food stamps, how to get Medicaid, how to get tutoring for your kids, even how to help you find a good paying job, how to get your driver's license back, how to make sure that your kids have access to after school programming and extracurricular activities, just investing in people. It seems that Allegheny County has no problem spending $100 million a year on the jail alone, when you just think about how many people we could have kept out of the jail if we invested in their health and well-being on the front end. And then we have the Department of Health and the Board of Health, a Board of Health, which are, usually people who are receiving political favors policymakers, from the county executive, who are appointed to these really important roles. And they're oftentimes corporate executives instead of people who have a scientific background, a medical background, an environmental background, or even just people who have lived experiences living in communities where the average life expectancy is low and the rates of air and water contaminants are really high. And so we need to make sure that we're bringing all of those people into the fold, because Allegheny County truly can be leading the way in so many of these issues if only we build a coalition that is broad enough and strong enough to work together to fight for people.
Thank you. Dennis?
Yeah, and I've touched on some of this, and Bethany touched on a lot of this too. I think when it comes to these health concerns and stuff like that, it's a completely multifaceted issue, and you can't address it with one thing, but we can kind of start with a few big things that can be addressed very quickly with the new county executive, whoever that might be, and the new makeup of the county council. So one of the first things I've been mentioning over and over again, and will continue to mention, is climate. Air quality. It disproportionately affects the poorest communities because those communities have problems with asthma, problems with other health concerns that are brought born out of these polluting industries and things like that. And those same people who have the worst effects of the pollution, the worst effects of the climate injustice that we see in the county, are the same people who have the least access to the healthcare in the county. And like Bethany said, we have $1 billion budget to kind of address these things, and that budget is not being allocated in a way that is fair to the people who have seen the worst of it all here in the county. I think one thing that's less it's still a really good concern, but maybe a smaller way to address that is also access to healthcare through transit. Our transit system here in Allegheny County is completely inadequate for the people who need it the most. I moved to Fifth Ave here in Shadyside so I could catch the bus down to Point Park, where I was going to college at the time. And the bus still does not show up half the time. And if it does show up, it's completely full. And that is one of the most served places by transit in the entire county. If you live in a community, some of these poor communities, the bus only comes once every hour. And if it doesn't show up, or if it's full, you're losing a job. You're not getting to your appointments on time. You're not going to be able to reschedule those, and you're losing money. I think another thing, and I'm running out of time here, but this is really important, the policing and criminal justice system. We over-police a lot of these neighborhoods, which sees a greater number of these minority populations ending up in our prison system, which has a death rate twice the national average. And we also see police cause the deaths of these same populations when they're out in the communities. And I think that's really important to address too when it comes to the health of all these different communities.
No, thank you, 100%. This is sort of related to health, right? Because this affects everything, really, but we're in a housing crisis. Like there's no doubt about that. This is countrywide, this is statewide, this is citywide, right? How can the county work to ensure that there are better and safer, housing options, affordable housing options, as we continue to see, development expand, and especially, in your area, Dennis, you have the East End, right? Most of the up and coming East End. And Bethany, of course, you're countywide. This is lovely in your house too. So yeah, what can the county do to increase access to affordable and safe housing? Starting with Dennis.
Yeah, we got to make sure that when these new developments are coming in, especially if they're on county land where we have more control over these things, is that we're zoning them and we're making sure that a percentage of these households, a high percentage, at least 20% of these new developments are being zoned so through inclusionary zoning to make sure that poorer populations, minority communities can afford to live there. And especially as rent prices increase and stuff, and rent prices increase and such, that we're not pushing the same communities out that have lived there their whole lives. And the same thing goes for when it comes to property reassessments. And as taxes start going up on these properties, we make sure that these communities that have lived here all their lives are not, we can freeze their property tax raises as well, to make sure we're not pushing people out. Just when we're bringing the services, just when we're bringing a lot of the things to the communities that we really want to see, and people have been asking for. I think also we have to make sure when we're developing these developments, we're developing them around affordable transit, mixed use zoning, because we want to make sure the people who live here don't necessarily have to own a car, which is very expensive, or in other forms of transit when they could easily just take the bus, or walk, or even take a bike. And I also think it's important when it comes to addressing homelessness and safe housing for the community that we're when we're talking about homelessness, we're addressing it from a perspective of we're going to try and get these people into homes first. It's really easy for everyone to say, and this is especially conservative talking point, that we encourage people who are drowning to we shout, we tell them what they need to do to kind of learn to swim and everything like that, when we could just pull them out of the water and help them in the very first place. And I've kind of butchered that analogy, but for the most part, I'm just saying we need to put these people in a place where they're stable and they can actually put themselves and do a lot of work for themselves. And I think that's all that a lot of people are asking for, is the opportunity to kind of help themselves out. And we can help them more if they need it, but for the most part, getting them in housing is a big first step.
Your analogy was plenty clear to me, man. So I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, Bethany?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the absolute first thing we need to do is build housing for people. We spend so much time talking about making sure certain percentages of different developments are affordable, which is absolutely important. But the reality is, the reason that sale prices are so high for buying homes, the reason that it's so expensive to rent an apartment, rent a home, is because the stock is so low. We need to increase the supply. It is simple economics. When supply goes up, cost goes down. And so I think that, first of all, we need to utilize the resource that is the Allegheny County Housing Authority and make sure that we are investing in giving people housing first. And so that is making sure that people have housing that is close to the resources of the community as well. Making sure that any developments that happen, shelters are great. I know a lot of people have been hailing the Second Avenue Commons, which is great for temporary shelter. But if we really want to be able to connect people with services, helping people with social services does not help them as much if they do not have a stable home life first. And so we need to make sure that we're meeting people where they're at, and where that at is in a stable home. Because otherwise, it's hard to focus on helping yourself in any other way, in getting a job, and getting access to health care or mental health care, in supporting your family, making sure your kids are doing well in school, when you have to worry about where you're going to sleep at night, how you're going to put food on the table. And so I think it is a housing first priority, making sure that we're using County Council's budgetary authority to prioritize housing, and saying, when it comes to making that budget every year, here are our priorities. We start with funding these first, and then we talk about everything else after. And we really just need to make sure that everybody has access to somewhere that they can feel safe, somewhere that they can lay their head down at night, somewhere where they can go to escape all the stresses of the outside world. And the only way to do that is for so many people to just provide it, to build it. And the county has the resources to do that. The county has the ability to acquire land. The county has land to do that. And it just hasn't been a priority for the county administration for the past decade or so. But I'm hoping that in the next 4 years, we can really change that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think they were in a unique moment, right? We have sort of, the mayor right now, with, Ed winning in 2021. We're going to have, like you said, a new county executive for the first time ever. It's hard to believe that the person who had the position was literally the county executive from the time it was a thing. Or maybe after. I don't
He
know.
was on county council since the time it was a thing, and then became county executive.
Fair enough.
My
fair
district, baby.
enough. Oh, man, there you go. There you go. A big part of what county council does, and what they've talked about recently, is the jail, right? And Bethany, I want to come to you first with this, because both of you, because of your lived experience within the jail, and also your work fighting for the rights of those who are inside. It's a very contentious issue, right? Just because in the United States, we hear jail, we hear prison, right? And we're trained to sort of associate that with deservedness, right? We think of bad people, right? And that's completely so off base. These are members of our community. A lot of people are just concerned with what's coming out, right? What is the county's responsibility to those who are incarcerated? What protections can be implemented to make our facilities, and I speak for both our adult facilities at ACJ, right? And we've talked a lot in the past few months about Schumann, right, which is obviously now closed, but an interim solution is looming. So what is the county's responsibility to those who are incarcerated, and what protections can be implemented to make our facilities safer? Starting with Bethany.
Well, Ross, I could talk about this for about 10 hours, but I will try to condense it to 2 minutes. So I am one of the first formerly incarcerated people to be elected to office in the entire country, and that's disappointing. I am the first formerly incarcerated person to ever serve on the Allegheny County Jail Oversight Board. Why is that? I have a lot of questions, and I think, an overarching answer to your question is because we don't see many people who are in positions to make decisions, who are in positions to make laws, who are in positions of oversight of our detention facilities, who have actually been in them themselves. And so that's a first step. We spend $100 million a year in our jail. And, I mentioned earlier, I cannot help but think over and over again, how many of those people we could have helped instead of paying $100 per person for every person who's in the jail. How much more we could have helped them if we would have invested in them in the front end. We have a constitutional obligation to provide health care and mental health care for every person in the jail. But instead, the county has been making profits off of incarcerated people. One of the first things I did after getting into office and getting on the jail oversight board was implemented a first of its kind monthly stipend for incarcerated individuals. Every single month, every single person in the Allegheny County Jail gets $125, whether they want to buy phone calls to talk to their loved ones, hygiene products on commissary because we don't provide that for them, food so that they don't go to bed starving at night. That was just one step. But we need to take it a step further and realize who is in our jail. 95% of the people in the Allegheny County Jail have not been convicted of a crime. They're either awaiting trial, can't afford their bail, or their bail was denied by a judge, or they're in there on a probation violation, which could have been anything as simple as smoking weed and failing a drug test or missing a meeting with their probation officer, and suddenly they're detained and they're sitting in the jail months on end, not knowing when they're going to get home. What we really need to focus on is getting people out of jail, keeping people from going there in the first place, and just making sure that at the end of the day, we are prioritizing people over prisons. We are realizing the humanity of every person in the jail, and everyone remembers that regardless of if I can make you care about the people in the jail or not, every single person in Allegheny County is paying to house them and paying for the lawsuits that arise out of the inhumane treatment at the jail.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Dennis.
I think because you do talk to people. I very rarely have a conversation with someone who holds the opinion, and this is very good because I think this has been a shift from what has happened recently, has been an opinion recently. I very rarely talk to anyone who has the opinion that the people in the jail deserve the treatment that they're getting in the jail, if they know anything about what's happening there. And even if they don't know anything, these people are under our care. They are under our care. Any death at all, any harm caused to these people is a direct reflection back on the county, and it is just unacceptable. And at the very least, we should advocate for humane treatment of the people being held in our prisons. Like Bethany said, 95% of these people have not even been convicted of a crime. That any of them should die or face any treatment that is anything that you would not expect of someone under just the care of any other system that would put people in our care, or healthcare system or anything like that, is just unacceptable. But it's also about the representation that we see when it comes to regulating these things, especially when it comes to when we actually put these people in these prisons in the first place. How do they end up there? And I think it's a lot of that comes from the fact that we don't have a lot of representation when it comes to making sure people have the resources they need in the first place to not even end up in the prison in the first place. And that's comes down to healthcare, access to healthcare, access to social services and everything like that. Are we catering to the people who need it the most? And are we representing those people and the people who make the decisions on where this treatment goes to? And I also think that comes down to our police in the county and the police in the city of Pittsburgh and everywhere else. Our police review board should not be made primarily up of police officers. It should be made up of the people who've actually seen the negative effects of over-policing in their neighborhoods. And our jail oversight board should similarly be made up of people, have a significant amount of people who have actually seen the effects of inhumane treatment in our Allegheny County jail.
Thank you. So this next question, I hate the fact that we're still addressing this in 2023, but we're here. And Bethany, since you're here, I have to ask you about the incident that happened several months ago. Election integrity continues to be a concern for certain folks, despite the mountain of evidence revealing that fraud and vote changes do not occur on a large scale. What do you believe should be done to help bolster confidence in our elections? I'll start with Dennis, and then of course we have to go to Miss Hallam because this was in the news a few months ago about her solution to this. So, starting with Dennis.
I very rarely hear concerns about people worrying about their votes being stolen or anything like that when I'm knocking on doors and talking to the people I talk to every day at the doors. The things I hear most of all are people are worried about having enough information, worried about how can they get their ballot in on time, and is this information available to them on time. We should be making it easier to vote, not harder. Every year, I'm surprised that they've made it harder to vote by mail, and I've stopped voting by mail, and a lot of people have stopped voting by mail as a result, because now you have to re-request your ballot every year. You have to add a postage stamp, which I'm pretty sure you did not have to add to when we did it during the pandemic as well. And these are just things that add up. We should be making it as easy as possible to vote. We should have drop boxes throughout the county. We should have early voting opportunities throughout the county. And I think as a result, if people see many opportunities to vote, know exactly what the ballot looks like before they go to vote, before they even make it to their polling place on election day, without having to the impetus being on them themselves to look all that information up, people will trust the system because they'll see it all in front of them. I also think that I also talk to a lot more people who are worried about will my mail-in ballot make it in, because Republicans and election denialists are going to, try and make my mail-in ballot not count during the next election. And this is just another example of, we just have to make sure it's as easy as possible to vote, and that there are many ways and many opportunities for people to vote by making it as transparent, as making it as upfront as possible. I talked to someone the other day at their, in their house, and they mentioned, I hate how I just don't know what the ballot looks like before I even get to the poll on election day. And I told them some ways they can look it up. But again, I don't think that should be on the people who are voting. I think we should just try and deliver that information to them, make it as easy as possible.
No, thank you for that. And I appreciate how thoughtful your answer was. These are real conversations that we have. You know what I mean? Like, everyone's perspective is different. Moving on next to alleged election denier, Ms. Bethany Hallam. Who, for context, a few months ago, there was an audit proposed, I believe, at county level, and Ms. Hallam was the only Democrat to vote in support of it for reasons, that might not make sense to some other folks. But I'll let her explain herself on this one. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people don't know that the Board of Elections, the at-large members of County Council, are 2 of the 3 members of the Board of Elections by nature. So whoever are the at-large members serve on the Board of Elections by default, along with the county executive. So our job is to make sure that the election process is smooth and transparent and easy for people to understand. We are also responsible for certifying election results. And I know a lot of my opponents and their supporters want to call me an election denier because I followed the law. The reality is that we are responsible for certifying election results. Now, that's not winners or losers, but it basically, we say the election results are final, here are the numbers, and they are tabulated to decide who wins and who loses. So in the 2022 general election, there were 12 out of the 1,323 precincts in Allegheny County where there were petitions filed at the Court of Common Pleas to ask for a recount to challenge the results of those precincts elections. And so we were tasked with certifying the elections, even though there were 12 petitions that were pending in front of a judge. So despite, what the attack ads say, we did certify the election results on the date of the Board of Elections meeting. We signed the paper, we did the certification, nothing was delayed. What we did do is we voted to say that those 12 precincts that were being challenged could not be included until a judge ruled either way. The petitions were pending in front of the judge, not the Board of Elections. We cannot supersede judicial authority. When the judge ruled on them a few days later, those 12 precincts were included as well. And that's why it's so important for so many people who don't understand the electoral process. It's important that we talk about what is the law? What is the role of the Board of Elections? What role do judges and other administrative bodies have to do with tabulating election results, administering elections? Because there's so much more we could do at the county level. Even just letting people know that there's an election before they start seeing candidate signs post up everywhere. When mail-in voting got implemented for the first time ever, we made creative campaigns and got naked to remind people not to submit naked ballots. And it worked. We need to expand drop boxes and satellite voting locations, all of the things that we know we can do within the confines of the law at a county level right now, while at the same time advocating for the state to change Act 77 that enabled mail-in voting at the state level. And they can do that by allowing early voting, by allowing canvassing of ballots early so that we have results sooner. But at the end of the day, we never want to rush the process. We want to make sure that at the end of the day, no one can question our results, that they are beyond reproach, and that we make sure that every single eligible vote is counted. And that's something that we can do at the county level and we'll continue doing.
100%. And unfortunately, it's so important that we do show our work, as every high school math teacher would be so vindicated right now. We're running out of time, so we're gonna ask two more questions here. The next question, we know that Build Back Better funds and other federal dollars that came out of the past couple years, right, have been designated to various projects. Do you think that enough public, commitment about the budget, do you believe that there's enough, not commitment, I can't speak. Do you believe there was enough public comment about the budget? And if not, what would you have done differently to create that comment? Starting in reverse order, going with Bethany and then Dennis.
Yeah, so there is no way that there was enough public comment about the budget process. And also, that's talking about all the budget process, not just federal dollars that were coming into Allegheny County, mainly as a result of COVID relief funds. So our budget process in the county is a really short window, and it doesn't need to be that way. It doesn't need to be a rushed process. We can have more than one or two meetings where we just hear from the directors of different departments, parroting the county executive's approved talking points. We need to take a more active role. And if we build a broader coalition of members of county council who are willing to do that, to assert our authority as county council and to use the voices of the districts we represent, we could have a budget process that works for many more people. Anyone who's familiar with the city's budgeting process and all the public comment periods and input that they get, I know it has its flaws and it's not perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than what we're doing at the county level right now. And so I do think that we need to take a more active role in the budget, not just amending the county executive's proposed budget, but actually using our authority as county council to create our own budget. And again, start with the things that we want to fund and then build everything up after that. When it comes to federal funds that come in, it is such a secretive thing. Even to this day, it is hard to know what COVID relief dollars were spent on as an elected official without going on the public-facing COVID dashboard. None of that money, the ARPA funds, was ran by county council first. We do not have any say on it because of the county administration, and they have kept complete control over that. I mean, COVID funds were used to renovate the elections division instead of keeping people safe in our community, instead of making sure that everybody had access to testing, instead of making sure that we had vaccine clinics in places that people could get to at times that worked for them, instead of making sure that we have different programming and outreach for people about the different things that we are supposed to do as a county government. And when you have more people on county council who believe in a transparent government, when you have a county executive who is accessible and accountable and transparent, those things can happen. They are within our purview under the charter, under the county code, under state law. But we just need folks who are willing to push to do it, because unfortunately right now it's just a few voices yelling by themselves.
It's too real. It's too real. Dennis?
Never have I ever seen the question, was the public engaged enough on this budget, on this issue when it comes to implementing it? And been like, yeah, probably we got enough public comment on this. We got enough public involved in this process. And I doubt that there was the same as the case, although I don't have as many of the details of this. But I do know when it comes to the county government, the transparency on our budget and our transparency in general is completely lacking. In fact, my opponent vote was the deciding vote on whether or not we would allow transparency of public hearings on the salaries of public officials in the county government here. And there's also just a whole host of other issues. But I think one of the main reasons that's the case is because of our campaign finance laws on the county level. I think when you keep things in the darkness, when that's whether that's the Build Back Better funds, whether that's our county budget, $3 billion budget, or whether that's contracts or everything that's coming in and jobs that were coming in and where we were going to assign people jobs, When you keep things in the dark, the people who will benefit are the people who are trying to do things for their friends or do things for their big donors throughout the county. And I think we need to make sure that we actually regulate the amount of the money that people can receive from different sources, and make sure if they are receiving that money, at the very least, that information is widely available and not just 2 weeks before election day. Because I think everybody who's voting, and I want to know before I decide to vote, where are these people getting their money from? So I really applaud some of the efforts of some of the candidates, especially for county executive. I've seen Anna Murado's campaign has posted all of their funds that they've received on their website. My donation, I have a pitiful donation that pops up there every once in a while for like $5 because I have a recurring donation set up. And I think my card declined once, so it stopped. It was just a pitiful like $1.90 or something. But that's not the point. I think it's just important that we're transparent about these things and that this information is available to everyone. And I think we can do that at the county level. And I think we can just make that public information. And until that happens, you're going to keep seeing issues of people not wanting this information to be public, not wanting the public to comment on where these funds go, because the people in power benefit from you not knowing.
Yeah, 100%. And that sort of information desert is sort of a key way that folks are kept out of these discussions, and that's a very intentional decision. Last question. This is certainly the easiest question. What is your vision of public safety, and what do you believe can be done on the county level to implement your vision? This is so easy. I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to answer. I'm going to go in reverse order, starting with Dennis and then ending with Bethany.
Yeah, definitely a piece of cake, for sure. I think one of the first things we need to do is make sure that, again, and I said this earlier, that the people who regulate our public safety systems, the people who regulate a lot of our systems that make sure that people don't have to interact with our public safety systems, or more likely our police in our county and in the city, are not representative of the people who actually have to interact with these groups the most. So I think that is one of the first things that we have to make sure is we have to make sure the people who are actually regulating these systems, people who are holding these people accountable, actually represent the communities that they're regulating, seeing the most contact with police officers and such. I also think we need to do a job of consolidating a lot of our police forces. We have so many municipalities with their own local police forces and their own problems that are not necessarily going to be addressed by their local municipalities. So I think we need to bring more municipalities under the curtain of the county police force so we can better regulate them and bring more accountability to more people and communities that need it the most. But I think it's also very important that we acknowledge the fact that even if our oppressive system is represented by someone who looks like us, it's still kind of an oppressive system for a lot of people. So I think we need to rethink our systems entirely. I think we need to have a really strong look about where our funding goes, whether it's going to our police departments throughout the county, and whether it's going to social services, housing first programs, or programs that really give people access to healthcare, access to public transit, and such like that. It's common sense that if you are in a better financial situation, you're going to have less interactions with the law. And that doesn't necessarily always reinforce, because sometimes we reinforce that by putting the law in the places where people, we think people are going to commit crime, and therefore reinforce this idea of high crime communities and such. I think we need to rethink this entire system, and it's not just enough to make sure that the representation is good at the top of the totem pole here. So I think it's a lot bigger than that. That's as much as I can kind of get across here.
2 minutes. Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Bethany, let me know if you need me to repeat the question.
No, I mean, you say it's a really easy question, and yet we keep seeing our leaders doing the same thing over and over again and never trying anything different. What we've been doing doesn't work. And also, I think it's important to start off by saying, when people say public safety, they mean policing, but true public safety means so much more than that. We need to start thinking of the concept of public safety and how do we keep communities safe, because it is very clear that it is not policing that keeps communities safe. Yet, we keep investing more and more and more money every single year on more police, on more weapons, on tanks in suburban communities that I represent. And yet, if crime isn't going down, maybe you would think that someone at some point would stop and say, maybe we should try something different. Maybe we should look at what is the actual root cause of crime. Do people need help because they're using drugs? Yes. We should prevent that instead of locking them up in a jail cell. Do kids need something to do so that they're not roaming the streets and getting into trouble? Absolutely. Kids can't go to malls anymore. They just got a curfew at the waterfront. There's no parks that they can go in after dark, and there's no recreation centers for them. So what do we expect them to do? Of course, they're going to be out and about jagging around with their friends. The same stuff we did when we were kids, except the difference is because of humongous investments in policing year after year, the communities are over-policed, predominantly lower income communities, and the communities that are predominantly made up of Black folks are over-policed and under-resourced. So again, if we took even a fraction of what we spend on police and invested it into our communities, made sure their parents made a living wage so that they don't have to work 3 jobs and can be present for their kids, make sure their schools are equitably funding so they have air conditioning when it's hot and heat when it's cold, so they have iPads and laptops when they need to work from home, so that their books are up to date. There are so many things that we can do for our community to make it safer that does not involve locking kids up, that does not involve ruining people's lives with few days stay in the jail or sending them upstate for years, that does not involve destroying communities, because that's how we end up with unsafe communities, when people are out of options, when people are desperate because their government was focused so much more on policing and punishing them than just giving them the help that they need. So it is a simple answer, yet no one seems to want to do that simple solution.
Thank you. Bethany Hallam with a word full of an answer right there. So I want to thank you guys again for joining us tonight. I am going to have you guys do one last statement to the folks before we have you guys sign off. Just as a reminder, this is not the end of our forum. We're going to do one more conversation with current county council person Dewitt Walton. We actually have a one-on-one tonight with him, so that's coming up as soon as we end this. We're going to take a 5-minute pause after these folks give their opening statements. Their closing statements. Then we're going to get to that. But yeah, thank you guys again for joining us tonight, both the crowd and both you guys. We're super, super grateful to have you guys here and have you guys on the show. The last question is just, what is bringing you joy right now? And anything else that you want to say to folks before you head off? I believe Bethany ended, correct, just now? Yeah, we're going to start with Bethany and then go to Dennis.
The Pirates are having the best season of my life.
Yeah.
That is bringing me so much joy right now. I cannot even tell you. But in addition to that, and I can't wait till the election's over and I can go to Pirates games again. But other than that, I love what I do. And I know that you might not always agree with me politically, but that's okay, because I hope that you have seen in the past 4 years, I'll always listen to you, and I will always fight like hell for every single person in this county, even when it's not the most politically advantageous thing for me to do for myself, because I know that's what's right. I will always be unapologetic. I might cuss a little bit and I might be a little scrappy, but it's because I care. This is the best job I've ever had in my life, and I know it's only a part-time job, but I can see the changes in the community. I can talk to people on the street and have them say, this piece of legislation that you passed, I get paid sick leave at my job now. Or I was down the Allegheny County Jail and I got to talk to my kid once a night and read her a bedtime story because you made sure I had money on my books. Things like that people are able to feel. That is what our job is. We are running to be public servants. That means that every single person in Allegheny County is my boss. You get to hire me, I hope you do, and you get to fire me if you think I'm not doing my job. But I hope at the end of the day, I will always fight for you no matter what it is. I will always listen. I will always be down for a conversation. If you need to slide into my DMs and let me know a problem you're having or a piece of legislation you want to see come to the table, I will always be accessible to you, because I think that's what we need. More real people in elected office, not career politicians who are doing it for themselves, but someone who really cares about us and is fighting for all of us. So I hope I can count on your support on May 16th, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. Dennis?
I think one thing that is bringing me joy right now is just the hope that I have in the betterment of our local politics here and what we can build here in Allegheny County. I was beyond excited when Ed Gainey won. I was just over the moon when Summer Lee won. And now we have an opportunity to elect a new county executive. And we talk to people all the time. I talk to people all the time at the doors who are just fed up. They don't believe we can change. And then I have to go and try and tell them to vote for this local member, this local one person, and try and convince them to take a step towards a big change and actually see a huge impact in their lives. And it's just the worst thing ever. Like to try and get them to vote for, when I was working for Chris DeLuzio, I was trying to convince them one vote on this Congress thing. And, we're going to fix everything in your local level. And, that is important. That is extremely important. But never have I been more convincing in my words to say we can make some huge changes here in Allegheny County very, very quickly. I truly believe that. And whether I win or lose, I'm going to keep working to make sure that happens. This is a part-time job. I'm not going to treat it like one. And I haven't been throughout this election because my bank account is yelling at me. It's actually coughing. It's dying. It's overdrafting. We're going to keep doing this, and I'm going to keep doing this. I'm so excited, and it's no BS. We have a real huge opportunity here. And I think we need to make sure that people know that, and they will meet the moment when we do.
Heavy on the overdrafting. No, but thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. Again, Bethany Hallam running for county council at large. So if you are in any part of Allegheny County, from Tarantum all the way down to like Bethel Park, which are like pretty much opposite ends of the county, I think, you have the ability to vote for Bethany. If you are in the East End, Shady Side, I'll let you say the rest of the counties, the communities.
So we got Shady Side, we got Squirrel Hill, we got Hazelwood, we got Greenfield, we got Carrick, we got South Side, we got the 31st Ward with Homestead, New Homestead, and everything like that. It's a pretty large district. So yeah, super large district.
So if you're in the East End, or it sounds like even like the lower Mon Valley, you are possibly able to vote for Dennis. So look that up. Allegheny County .gov is the place to go. But we want to thank both of our candidates for showing up tonight. We're going to take 5 minutes before our next candidate, which again is incumbent District 10 County Council member Dewitt Walton. But thanks again to Bethany and Dennis. And be sure to vote, if not by the May 9th voting by mail deadline on May 16th at your polling place. We're going to take 5.
So the mission of One Hood Media is to build liberated communities through art, education, and social justice. We're somebody that's really visible in Pittsburgh. So what we're looking for is to build, a free liberated community in Pittsburgh for our community and for all others. My name is Jasiria X, co-founder and CEO of One Hood Media.
Hi, my name is Miracle Jones. I am the Director of Policy and Advocacy. And essentially what I do is take our arts and our activism and pair those together to put forth policy by meeting with decision makers and stakeholders so that we're able to put forth work that really impacts people's lives while also bringing impacted people to the table to make sure that they're represented and heard and supported as they build liberated communities.
My name is Farouk Al-Saeed. I am the Director of Operations here at One Hood Media. The mission of One Hood Media is to build liberated communities through arts, education, and social justice. But we're able to actually, all praises due, be able to put that in application and actually facilitate change. When you talk about liberation, to me, man, that's such a powerful word, but it's also daunting. It's not something that you're really able to answer until you're faced with the situation and you realize that you're in need of liberation, that you've been shackled, that you've been oppressed, you've been systemically and historically excluded. When you start to look about that, then you can't even begin to comprehend what liberation is. So that's why it's important to have that conversation and frame it in that specific way.
The concept of One Hood actually came out of us working around issues of community violence, that like our power is in our unity. How can we take this energy and like move it to where we begin to change like real policies in the city? And so I think what we were able to show is a protest is theater, and it's really art, right? It's really to bring folks together and kind of inspire you, but it inspire us to do what? And so we were able to say, okay, let's take this energy and let's bring it towards some things that can make real change in our community. And that's what we're looking at doing right now.
Our unity is our power and our strength, much to chagrin of me sometimes, because I'm sometimes like, maybe we don't need to be unified. But Sherry's always like, we need to bring in more organizations, we need to bring in more partners, we need to bring in more people, because the more we move as a unit, the more we're able to actually change the infrastructure and really, really shake things up.
One Hood was always looked at as a collective of performers and artists. We were just socially conscious. If we establish a legacy, that means we've established a relationship with the people that we serve.
We try to create an environment where you can feel free to be your authentic self in these spaces. And we're hoping in that environment can expand throughout the city.
We are here to continue our county council forum ahead of the May 16th primary. I sound like a broken record, I know, but I'm just going to repeat this one more time. I apologize. I apparently can't speak English today either. The last day to register to vote is today. That is May 1st, 5/1/23. If you have not registered to vote yet and you need to register to vote, meaning you're a person who is a first-time voter, you're a person who's moved, you're a person who is coming back from incarceration, today is the deadline to register to vote. You still have time to do it online. No problems whatsoever. If you're doing it in person, hurry up and fill that bad boy out like right now and drop it in the mail like right now. Because otherwise you might not be registered in time to participate in the May 16th election. The May 9th is the deadline to vote by mail. Once again, we discussed over-the-counter voting. That's downtown at the city county building or adjacent to it. That's going to be from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. every day until May 9th. You go, you request your ballot. They give you your ballot. You fill it out right there, and it'll be counted on election day. And of course, May 16th is the election day itself. So we are literally 15 days away. Quite terrifying, quite exciting, whatever adjective you want to throw in there. But important information for anybody who needs to register to vote. We're super excited right now. The second segment initially we had planned with both candidates for District 10, which is most of the eastern part of the county. Unfortunately, Mr. Carlos Thomas was not able to join us tonight. So we have more time with incumbent county council person Dewitt Walton, who has graciously joined us tonight to talk about the position, talk about why he's running, and to talk about what's important ahead of the election. So with that, I'd like to ask that Mr. Walton come on screen.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Ross. But I want to add to the point that you made regarding voting. If you are in Allegheny County Jail and you are registered to vote, you still have the ability to vote even in the jail. There's a process in place in the Allegheny County Jail that anyone that wants to cast a ballot can. Secondly, if you were incarcerated and you were released, and if you were registered to vote prior to being incarcerated, your voting rights were suspended while you were in SCI or the federal institution, but upon your release, your rights to vote were reinstated. You don't have to re-register. Your ability to vote is still there. And so that's an important point to note for everyone as we move forward. Secondly, the legislative district that I represent starts in Braddock Hills, moves over to Edgewood, also includes Wilkinsburg, all of the East End wards 13, 12, 11, 8, 3, 4, no, not 3, 4, and 5. And that includes parts of South Oakland. So if you're part of that district, you can vote for me. And I'd like to ask you here and now for your support in my reelection. When I ran for the first time, I based my campaign upon this principle: to empower residents and rebuild communities. Everything that I've done in the intervening period has been focused on doing just that. I think my record reflects that. I'm prepared to discuss any and all issues surrounding that, and issues that you may find important in your own opinion. We're about solving problems, improving the quality of life, creating greater opportunities for the residents of County Council District 10 and the county in general. I'm committed to improving the quality of life and doing everything that I can within my power to make that happen.
Absolutely. And I really do appreciate the correction there. Incarcerated folk who recently incarcerated, recently come out of incarceration, are folk who are left out consistently. So I definitely appreciate the note there for sure. You already kind of did your introduction there, and I appreciate that. So we're gonna head on to our first question, which is, what do you view as the fundamental purpose of county council? And I'm sure you have an interesting answer here. Being the incumbent, I'm sure your views on this may have changed from the beginning of your term until now. But what do you view as the fundamental purpose of county council?
We're the legislative arm of county government. There's three parts, much just like the United States in general. There's the legislative branch, there's the executive branch, and there's the judicial branch. The legislative branch is tasked with creating, developing, and implementing legislation to improve the quality of life of the residents of Allegheny County. We're also tasked with negotiating, with the leadership to solve problems of the residents of Allegheny County. And it's not complex, it's not easy, but that's what we're tasked with, being the legislative arm and developing legislation to resolve challenges and identify issues and to develop policies that, again, improve the quality of life of the residents of the county.
Understood. So sort of going along with that, a big part of improving folks' quality of life, right, is, understanding what that means, right? Understanding what are the issues, understanding what are the needs of the community. I know that you're also a community organizer, so this is sort of like in your wheelhouse. How can you use this post, and how have you used this post already in your term to connect with the community? And why is connecting with the community important in this particular political moment that we're in?
If you look at it, there's a myriad of lanes and that we have to travel through. If we're talking about empowering residents, you're talking about ensuring that their votes, that they have the ability to vote. It's about creating legislation that creates real opportunities for them, for their lives to improve, raising per capita income, improving educational outcome, improving public safety. If you do those kinds of things, then the lives of residents in Allegheny County will improve. You know, in 2020, we partnered with One Hood and a host of organizations and county government to do satellite voting. The only time that satellite voting has been done in Allegheny County. And we created an opportunity for drop boxes to increase the opportunity for folks to go out and cast ballots, to vote for candidates of their choosing. By voting in those kinds of numbers and demonstrating that commitment to the electoral process, gave our communities real power. We had drop box voting in Homewood. We had drop box voting in the Hill. We had drop box voting on the north side. That gave those impacted communities greater opportunities to cast their ballots in their word, and so their voices are heard and given real attention, that folks couldn't be ignored. So that sends clear and convincing messages to the powers that be, to elected officials, that we're here and we're not going away. We're part of the process, and the concerns that impact our communities must be given significant attention. When you talk about economics, as county councilman during my first term, I was chair of the Economic Development Committee. And as being chair of the Economic Development Committee, I did a couple of things. I built partnerships with the current county executive to create greater diversity and opportunity for folks that look like us. Currently, I said, we need more Blacks in greater leadership positions. We need more dollars spent with African-American businesses. As an example, the Wilson Group, a company that sells copying and printing equipment, secured $1 million contract with Allegheny County, the first of its kind, to sell copiers and paper and their goods and services, to grow their business and to expand minority business ventures. In addition, we had the county exec, based upon our commitment and our urging and our working in a collaborative fashion, to put in deputy directors in economic development, to put in a deputy director in the minority and women's and disadvantaged business enterprises, to create greater economic opportunity for minority businesses. We wanted to make sure that our voices were heard, that our concerns were addressed in a constructive way. We did that, and we're doing that every day. It's about, those are the kinds of things that you may not be able to do legislatively, but you're able to do it based upon your relationships and your integrity and your demonstration of let's do business. Let's improve the quality of life for all residents of Allegheny County.
No, thank you for that. And I think, as you said, yeah, it's multifaceted, right? And you outlined the importance of bringing folks to the table. I think, and this next question sort of addresses this, right? It becomes harder to, bring folk to a table, the further from the table that they reside, right? This district in particular, not just this district, but definitely this district, has been impacted by gentrification. And I know that that's not just a county thing, that's many levels, right? What can be done to make sure that, our people in particular don't have to move further east like we've been moving, right? And moving away from our political power, moving away from our concentration and the things that, folks like yourself and people for many years have built, right? how do we prevent people from having to move further out, right? And not only that, but how do we bring people back?
Ross, you are exactly correct. One of the things that I did is I asked, as chair of economic development, for several things. I asked the Port Authority, as it was called then, to give me the GIS maps based on race, age, income, and gender of where Black folks lived and where they were moving. And clearly, current people are moving based upon lack of employment opportunities, lack of income. Folks are being forced out of the city, down into the valley and into Penn Hills. And so those maps indicated that. And so we had to try to find solutions to address those ills in a significant way. You started by saying that I'm a community organizer. You're right. I'm on a pro bono basis. I'm vice president of the Pittsburgh A. Philip Randolph Institute, a social and economic justice organization. We built partnerships with county government. We built partnerships with manufacturing. We built partnerships with the building and construction trades and health organizations to create greater employment opportunities for folks that look like us, have dreams like us, and aspirations like us. We're not where we need to be, and we're continuing to work every day on generating greater employment opportunities for folks of color and people that have been previously incarcerated to have employment opportunities in those venues. And we're meeting success. Today was a great example for me. I'm sitting in my office and I had a meeting at 1 o'clock, and then I had forgotten that I had a 2 o'clock with a young man that lives in the Hill, who graduated from my program, and I had the diversity recruiter from the Steamfitters Union there to meet with him. We pushed this young man and paid for him. He came through our workforce development program. The A. Philip Randolph Institute paid for him to get a driver's license so that he can compete for a family-sustaining career. He met with the diversity recorder. I've been working with his mom, and his mom is buying the boy a car so he can get to work every day. And the boy he's supposed to get his car tomorrow, and he'll go to work Wednesday in family-sustaining work. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing every day to make a difference, to make sure that our residents are empowered and we rebuild those communities. And if we keep doing that, we're better able to fight gentrification, because you raise that issue. And the reason people are being forced to leave our communities is they can't afford to live there. That young man will start out, and his first year of work, he'll earn over 40 grand. As he completes his apprenticeship, by his fourth year of apprenticeship, he'll earn over $100,000 a year. Those are the ways that we fight gentrification. We raise per capita income. In the Hill District, per capita income is under 17,000. In Homewood, under 17 grand. When you look at our communities where Black folks are living, we don't have employment opportunities, because if we create greater employment opportunities and they take those jobs, they can afford to stay where they're at and push back against gentrification.
100%. And unfortunately, the scenario that you described, right, is all too common. We rely on organizations, right, that might receive some, degree of public dollars, but are ultimately run by private people, members of the community, to do the work that, our government really, should have the capacity to do. But because of years and years of policy choices, is not the case in a lot of instances. This next question, going back, I guess, to working with municipalities and going back to working with different parts of the county. How do you do that? How do you bring folks to the table from smaller municipalities from the city of Pittsburgh, as you work to increase funding, from the county and from other places, and how, I guess, are you working with our small municipalities to ensure equity?
Man, I'm glad you asked that one. Check this out. The borough of Wilkinsburg has a really horrible tax base, and they have problems with a main sewer line, a joint sewer line that between them and the borough of Edgewood. Because of sewage overflows, there's a huge repeated dump of sewage from Wilkinsburg onto a baseball field in Edgewood. Edgewood became part of my legislative district in January. I went to their first meeting. They said, we got a problem. We got a problem. We have this sewage overflow from Wilkinsburg dumping into Canning Field in Edgewood. We need your help to get this problem solved. I said, I will look into it and I'll find a solution and I'll build a collaborative effort to resolve it. What I did the very next morning, I called the county exec. I said, Rich, there's a problem. You wouldn't want sewage in your backyard. You wouldn't want your kids playing in that kind of situation. We need to fix this. Rich assigned a staffer to work with me, and we began to work with Alcosan to identify the problem. We put together a couple $1 million at a zero interest loan for the borough of Wilkinsburg to begin to resolve it. That $2 million won't totally fix the problem. So we went a step further. We partnered with Alcosan and Three Rivers Wet Weather, and we asked Congressman DeLuzio to put some earmarks in this year's fiscal budget to resolve the problem. That's how you do stuff, working collaboratively with the boroughs and the communities in which we serve to deal with the issues that they're confronted with to improve the quality of life, rebuild those communities, resolve the issues that they're confronted with, find solutions. That's what we're about, finding solutions.
No, 100%. And the scenario that you mentioned, right, I'm sure, the folks who might not busy themselves with the happenings of local government, seems easy, but I'm sure that took a lot of paperwork, a lot of, phone calls, a lot of follow-up, so it's important that those discussions are being had and that folks know what they're doing when those are happening. So our next question, deals with health, right? There's a lot of health concerns that we have in Pittsburgh, and that's not new, right? My dad grew up in Homestead, my mom grew up in Braddock, right? Both mill towns, right? It's nothing new that we know that we have environmental and health concerns, right? From everything from fentanyl, right? And of course, you're familiar with the study, that shows Pittsburgh is one of the worst places for Black infant mortality, right? How can the county improve health outcomes for our residents?
There are multiple steps that we have to take to resolve that issue. It's not going to be fixed in one day. It's not going to be fixed in 1 year, but we have to build programmatic policies and implement those policies to address those issues in a meaningful kind of way. And those solutions range from good jobs with good healthcare programs built into those jobs, good union jobs. That's one piece. What we also have to do is continue to implement policies that's going to improve the quality of life relative to healthcare and a cleaner environment, because a cleaner environment means good jobs as well. But and you also have to build dollars and put dollars in your county budget to tackle those challenges as well. For example, relative to mental health, we partnered with the county executive and we put an additional $5 million in this year's budget to deal with mental health through DHS. DHS spends close to $1 billion a year on different policies and practices that impact the quality of life. Increase funding for family health centers, whether they be in Homewood, whether they be in the Hills, whether they be in the Mon Valley, and putting additional dollars and making sure that family support centers and fatherhood initiatives are working to create real transformative practices and opportunities for folks that utilize those services. We have to spend the dollars that are there, and we have to make sure that the programs that are there are accountable and transparent, that those administrators are doing their job. We have to provide the resources wherever possible and make sure that there's accountability and transparency throughout the process.
100%. And sort of sticking on the topic of health, right? Like community violence of any kind is extremely related to that, both in terms of who it impacts directly, but also just the larger community, right? No one wants to live in a place where they might have to fear for their life, more often than not. Although unfortunately, that's the reality of a lot of people, right? Gun violence is not something that's limited to a particular zip code or a particular area, but because of systemic poverty, right, and systemic disinvestment, right, it often impacts our communities the most. What would you say that you have done to curb this during your term, and what do you think needs to be done to go further?
Well, I wish it was simple, but the prime thing that I've done is create greater employment opportunities for folks from those impacted communities. Because if you raise per capita income, you'll increase home ownership. And if you raise per capita income and increase home ownership, the third result of that is an improvement in public safety. I just sat in on a session about 3 weeks ago with individuals from the county health department, where there's been a multi-year study to identify gun violence from the community where it occurs, the time that it occurs, the location. And that stuff, that information is available for anyone's review. And I'm more than happy to share that. If anybody wants to see that study, reach out to me at dewitt.walton@alleghenycounty.us. And I'll share that. I'll send that study. You send me an email and I'll share that study. Everybody needs to be able to see what's going on and where it's going on. And you'll be able to better understand the causality of it all and its impact on our communities. Gun violence is an epidemic not only in Pittsburgh, but it's an epidemic across this country. And one of the things that we've done here in Allegheny County is we've dedicated $50 million to violence reduction programs, ranging from focus on renewal, reimagine reentry, to a host of programs that are centered on reducing violence in our neighborhoods, addressing the mental health challenges. We're working at it. We're not where we need to be, but we're a lot better off than we were. And we have to keep working at it every day to get to where we need to be.
Thank you. One sort of, other aspect of this, obviously the first part of the criminal justice system happens, on the street, police are the first interaction with folk. Unfortunately, because of decisions that are made both, personally and also like in terms of our justice system, a lot of folks end up, at ACJ, right? Or in a different circumstance that they did not want to be in. The jail has been a pretty contentious topic for the past year. And I know you sit on the jail oversight board as a member of county council.
No, I don't.
No. Okay. Got it. You've been at a couple meetings. So the jail, like I said, it's been contentious, right? And especially as it pertains to the conditions inside of ACJ and in terms of what we're doing with our youth, with the closing of Schumann and the potential, future of that facility. What do you think the county's responsibility is to folks who are incarcerated, and what protections can be implemented to make sure that our facilities are safe for our incarcerated population?
I want to make sure I understand your question so that I can give you a concise answer. Your question is, what do you think the county's responsibility is to make the jail safe for the detainees?
Yeah. So what is the county's responsibility, period, to those who are incarcerated? And then what protections can be implemented to make these facilities safer?
I believe that the county has the responsibility of detaining individuals that are accused of a crime, to ensure that they have access to health care during their detention, to have a process in place to address barriers that those detainees face, and to the greatest extent possible, give them a path before their release to generate health care and an opportunity to engage in a rehabilitative process. In a significant way, we have been involved, the A. Philip Randolph Institute that I direct every day, has been involved for a number of years in bringing our training program to Allegheny County Jail, dealing with inmates on the reentry pod, and during its existence, the Hope Pod, and to help identify training programs that could provide paths forward upon their release to family-sustaining careers. We've done that. More work needs to continue to go on, and we're continuing as we move past COVID, to work with them, the Allegheny County Jail, to create opportunities for folks to have family-sustaining careers upon their release. Now, if you want to talk about some of the issues that have taken place, I think there is work that continues to need to be done. But in terms of ensuring that inmates are safe in the jail, we recognize that there have been fatalities for a variety of reasons. But the last death in the jail was this past September. The last suicide in the jail was more than 2 years ago. So again, I'm not saying that work doesn't need to continue to take place, but I am saying that things are taking place, and there's a concerted effort to make sure that the jail is run in as humane a fashion as is possible.
Understood. I want to be very direct. This is a question that's come up for a lot of folk who are seeking county council or seeking the county executive post. What do you think is to be done with the current warden of ACJ, if there is anything to be done?
What do you mean?
Frankly, I mean, so let me not misspeak here, because I want to speak in terms of concretes, not in terms of hypotheticals. a lot of the complaints that have been coming out to the media about, things like heating, things like access to food, things like access to medicine, right? That's all under the warden's watch. The warden as a top official, in the jail. I guess just given these concerns, both coming from constituents and coming from, other folks who are running for office right now, I guess, do you see an immediate change that needs to be made with the warden?
Well, let's deal with the issues that you outlined. Healthcare for folk, and particularly for folk that are about to be released. You talked about heating and you talked about food. Let me give you some statistics. Let me give you some numbers. We received because we're part of this whole reentry effort. We've been working on this reentry effort for a number of years, and we've been working about the jail. And I've had specific kinds of conversations with the warden to try to tackle some of the concerns that you raised and that have been raised generally. For example, relative to health, there's a full health complement there at the county jail, and the contract was with an organization out of Tennessee. That organization was found not to be meeting all of the standards of the jail. That contract was terminated and ultimately picked up and serviced through AHN. And over the past, and in 2015, a specific program was put into place for folks in the jail with substance abuse problems to try to get them health care and to determine whether or not those individuals were eligible for Medicaid. In October of 2022, that program was expanded to everyone that is being released from the Allegheny County Jail, whether they were in treatment or not. And over the past 6 months, there were 627 applications made for Medicaid applications for folks to be released from the jail. Of that 627, 551 were approved. 2 were denied. There are 14 applications that are currently pending, and there are 52 individuals that refuse to make application. So again, I'm not saying to you that it can't be improved, but I'm saying that clear and concise work is being done in the Allegheny County Jail to deal with those problems and to make sure that we try to address concerns. The warden has a difficult job, incredibly difficult. His job is to detain folks and to make sure whatever they're there, his job is to maintain a detention facility. Again, let's think about it. Prior to COVID, the jail has a capacity of about 3,600 inmates. Prior to COVID, just before COVID broke, there were 2,700 plus inmates in the Allegheny County Jail. Through a series of actions with the courts, the jail population now is down to less than 1,700. Now, again, getting people out of there as quickly and as humanely as possible. We have a concurrent responsibility to get people out, but we also have a responsibility is to keep the residents of Allegheny County safe. Some folks deserve to be in jail, like it or not. I'm not here to judge, but I do know I want my community to be safe. I believe you want your community to be safe.
That's a fact.
So, we have to find a balance, and it's not an easy balance.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. So it sounds like what you're saying is that, like, there are issues within the jail, but that there's a lot of work that's already being done, and that should be looked at as well.
Very much so.
Understood. Okay. Next question is sort of related because it's all related to public safety. What is your vision for public safety for the county, and what do you believe can be done? And in your case, you're an incumbent. I guess, like, what have you tried to do to sort of implement your vision of public safety in the county?
Several things. Most publicly, I introduced and ultimately had passed the Independent Police Review Board. That was a multi-year effort. Some of my council members were obstructionists in getting that legislation passed. The current council president tried to put, when I initially introduced the legislation, he tried to put in poison pill amendments. And I fought vociferously to get those amendments rejected. Some of our current members of council tried to put in amendments that would cripple that legislation. We fought, and the first 2 years, we weren't able to get it passed. Upon the start of the next council session, I reintroduced the same legislation, and I continued to fight. Ultimately, we were successful in getting that legislation passed. And now that the review board has been formulated, and we're in the process of trying to establish or hire an executive director and the staff of that operation. That's one piece. The second piece that I do not so publicly, that I do very quietly, is I use the relationships of the partners that I've been able to develop in the boroughs. There's a policing problem in terms of we can't get enough police in a number of the boroughs. And I've been working with those boroughs, encouraging them to regionalize those police forces. I'll say publicly that Braddock Hills, that just became part of my legislative district in January, and we've been having conversations about how they can regionalize. Some of the other boroughs that I represent are looking at those issues in a similar fashion. Because again, if you don't have folks that can provide public safety, then you got a problem. If you don't have respect for and from the police, you got a problem. I want to attack all of those issues at its root and to make the quality of life across Allegheny County better for all residents.
Thank you. One thing that is kind of a thread that relates to all of this is housing, and I said it previously that, I think we're undeniably in a housing crisis, right? And this is not just Pittsburgh, this is the whole country. You talked about, your work with workforce empowerment and economic empowerment. How do you think, specifically with housing, the county can work to be sure that there's affordable housing, and that there's safe housing, because both of those are really important. And all this happening as the region continues to grow, continues to expand. How can we make sure that both have access to affordable housing and safe housing?
Well, again, as we said earlier, many of the reasons that folks are moving out of the city is that they can't afford to live here. If we raise their income, they're able to afford the housing that's here. Additionally, relative to development, an organization operation is getting ready to break ground in a couple of months, a place called Midpoint Towers. It's a minority-owned development, breaking ground in Uptown in June. I was able to use my relationships again with legislators in Harrisburg to get state funding called RCAPS to help close the financial gap so midpoint towers can be built. 20% of midpoint towers will have affordable housing. And additionally, on the construction side, men and women from the A. Philip Randolph Institute are going to go to work on that facility to earn money so they can continue to live in the communities in which they live. So it's a multifaceted kind of problem, but it all relates to money and a commitment to having policies that improve the quality of life for all residents in Allegheny County.
Oh, sorry, the mute button is not my friend today. Thank you, and I 100% agree. You know, economic empowerment is the key to self-determination. Self-determination is the key to being able to solve a lot of your own problems. So that is key. We know county council is, you know, a body that works in tandem with the county executive to make our budgets, to make our fiscal plans for the county. We know in the past couple of years, right, with Build Back Better, with, you know, other federal programs, a lot of dollars have been designated to different projects. Do you think there was enough public comment about the budget? And if you didn't, what would you do differently?
Well, let me say this. The budget, the presentation of the budget is mandated that we pass a budget within 26 days of the end of the calendar year. So we're mandated by law to do that. But the budget process is year round. We talk to communities every week, trying to understand their needs, trying to understand what they believe to be important. And I talk to individuals on a daily basis that are looking for support from the county for various projects. And I will refer them to various entities, whether it's the MWDB department, whether it is the Economic Development Department, whether it's to the Purchasing Department, or to the county executive themselves, trying to identify the best way that we can build the energy, again, to improve the quality of life for all residents of Allegheny County. You can't say, and anyone that wants to propose a 20-day window or a 25-day window that you tackle budgetary issues, they're out of their mind. It's a year-long process, identifying, finding ways of determining what can happen. And relative to ARPA, relative to Build Back Better, I meet with the executive on a regular basis. I pick up and say, hey, Rich, I got these concerns, man. These folks need stuff. How can we help it? How can we make it work? You know, an example, about 2 years ago, Patrick Dowd, who is president of Allies for Children, proposed a 0.25 millage increase on the county tax rate for a children's fund. And it was a ballot initiative. That ballot initiative failed, and rightfully so it failed. But the issue didn't go away. We sat down with Patrick and said, let's meet with the county exec and let's find a way to address the concerns that you raised. And what we did is we put together a task force that did a 6-month of research, and we came up with a $20 million initiative that we included in the county budget to fund early childhood education, pre-K, and after-school programs. So it is how you look at it and how you find solutions to the problems that you're confronted with that improve the quality of life of residents of Allegheny County.
Thank you. Thank you. We're moving into our last questions here. City council, sorry, not city council, county council, you know, as a 4-year position. This is you're seeking your second term, correct?
My third term.
Third term. Okay. Okay. You've obviously, you know, laid out what you've accomplished, you know, thus far in your previous, some of what you've accomplished in your previous terms. What goals do you want to achieve, you know, if chosen to be elected for a third term?
More. It ain't rocket science, man. You know, if we've been doing what's right for the residents of Allegheny County, we need more of it. And I pledge to do more of it.
Understood. That's a simple and clear answer for sure. Our last question before we move into closing statements, and I want to again thank you for spending time with us here tonight and being with us here tonight as we try to get folks ready for the election. What gives you hope for the future? And obviously, you know, you have a bit of an age advantage on me, so you've seen a lot more than I have. You know, been through a lot more than I have. But what gives you hope for the future, even through what you've seen, and what is your joy based in right now?
On the progress that's been made. You know, I got started in this game a long time ago. The 1965 Voting Rights Act transformed this country. Prior to 1965, there were less than 300 African-American mayors and elected officials across this country. Post the 1965 Voting Rights Act, I had an opportunity to work on the election in 1967 for Richard Gordon Hatcher, the first African-American mayor of a first-class city in the United States. He and Carl Stokes were elected the same night, November 2nd, 1967, the mayors of first-class cities in this country. Man, that changed the day. I went to school that fall, and my first day on campus, I got shot at. I got shot at standing on the campus simply because I was Black. And then, right after that, we had avowed racists like George Wallace declare their candidacy for president of the United States. I went to school on a basketball scholarship. I played the basketball season, and the day we played our last game, I stopped going to class, and I had put together a crew where we moved around the country chasing George Wallace and raising holy hell, fighting and standing up for what we believed in and justice. I had to go to summer school to get back in school that fall, but I did that, and I've had mentors and folks that have showed me the way my entire life. I got a chance to meet Jimmy Carter in 1973. I worked for Senator Frank Church in his presidential campaign in 1976. I worked for Richard Gordon Hatcher, Harold Washington, Katie Hall, John Conyers. I've done it all. And they've given me hope and inspiration that things are getting better, but you have to stay at it. You can't give in, you can't give out, and you damn well better not give up. I fight for what I believe in, and I have joy. You talk about joy? To sit there this afternoon and to see a young Black man who just graduated from high school last year to get a chance to earn $100,000 a year in an honorable way, a straightforward way, and to do that on a routine basis. Man, it don't get no better than that. If that doesn't give you hope, you're in the wrong world. That's who I am. That's what I do. And that's what I'm about. And that's what I will do till my last breath. Thank you, brother.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of our program tonight. I want to thank again current county council person Dewitt Walton, again District 10. So that's all the way from Braddock Hills. I don't know the northern boundary, but it goes pretty far. I'll let you explain any closing statements. But thank you again for being with us here tonight. Thank you for joining us as we ramp up for this really important election. This is a quote unquote off year. There's no such thing. And it's laying the groundwork for 2024. So with that, I will throw this back to Mr. Walton for his closing statement.
Man, I'm full of hope. I'm inspired because of the people that surround me, the relationships that I've been able to build, and the difference I've made. I'm asking for your support to give me a chance to continue to build on that, to continue to empower residents and rebuild communities. Thank you.
All right, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow at the same time for our City Council Forum. Good night.
Over the course of a few years, life yielded a crisis of pandemics, resulting in many reeling and searching for answers. Black men especially have had to grieve the passing of hip-hop icons DMX, Michael K. Williams, Biz Markie, and many others. How has this impacted Black men? How has this altered the way they see themselves, their ability to express themselves, and their mental health? We sit down with Black men raised on the culture of hip-hop and ask them directly, let's have a bite, take a step back in order to move forward. I'm your host, Miracle Jones, and this is Brunch with the Black Man.